Turning our attention to the 1995 Washington quarter, you might assume it's just another face in the crowd of pocket change. But this piece carries its own backstage drama, one that sent ripples through the collector community years ago and still has aficionados buzzing. Originally struck as a standard circulation coin, the 1995 quarter was minted at both Philadelphia, no mint mark, and Denver, D., celebrating the United States' 218th year. At first glance, it seems straightforward: George Washington's portrait on the obverse, and on the reverse, an eagle perched on a bundle of arrows with olive branches beneath, symbolizing readiness for peace or war. Yet, as is often the case with U.S. coinage, the devil's in the details, and a handful of these quarters ended up with quirks that instantly elevated them from common to coveted. To appreciate why certain 1995 quarters command attention, it helps to know where they fit in the timeline. This design, first introduced in 1932, marked the bicentennial of Washington's birth, and by 1995, it was firmly established. Still, minting millions of coins every day leaves room for tiny errors, die cracks, off-center strikes, and, most famously for this year, the double die obverse. That's right, a small, unintentional misalignment during hubbing caused the lettering and profile on a limited number of coins to appear faintly duplicated. If you peer closely at "In God We Trust" or the date, 1995, you can spot a shadowy second image just to the west of the main letters. It's subtle, and most hands will never notice. This subtlety drives collectors wild when one of these slips into a change roll. Identifying a 1995 double die quarter starts with a simple loop inspection. The most distinctive doubling shows up on the words "Liberty" and on Washington's cheek. This is different from the more dramatic double dies seen on earlier coins. Here, you're looking for very slight ghosting or a faint outline. For a seasoned collector, even a whisper of doubling is enough to trigger excitement. Other varieties exist too: off-center strikes where the design is noticeably shifted, and die cracks that snake across the face of the coin. A particularly eye-catching example is a 1995 D quarter with a prominent die break extending from the hairline near Washington's ear down toward the rim. Though not as glamorous as doubling, these die cracks can create unique patterns that draw collectors who specialize in error coins. So, what are these 1995 double die quarters worth today? For circulated examples showing a hint of doubling, values begin around $30 to $50, depending on how clear the doubling is. A sharp strike in mint state, graded MS-63, can fetch between $200 and $300. As you move up the scale, an MS-65 graded example with bold doubling has been known to bring in about $700 at auction. One remarkable instance involved an MS-66 example, where every hair detail is crisp, and the doubling is unmistakable, selling for $1,100 in early 2025. That sale underscored how a coin from a high mintage year can achieve top dollar simply because the error is so pronounced and the surface so pristine. If you track auction houses that specialize in numismatic rarities, you'll often find these quarters popping up, each commanding a handful of bids from collectors who recognize just how scarce they really are. But beyond auction figures, there's a human element to these discoveries. Imagine a longtime collector who had spent years accumulating high-grade quarters for a registry set. In 2019, he purchased a single coin dealer lot filled with rolls labeled "Bag Fresh, Uncirculated." As he inspected the batch under a 10x loop, one coin caught his breath: clear doubling across Washington's cheekbone. That lone find prompted him to trace the roll back to the mint, only to learn that perhaps hundreds of these error coins had slipped through before quality checks were tightened. Over the next few months, he tracked down other collectors, struck private deals, and eventually assembled a mini collection of 5 solid MS-65 examples, each purchased for well under $500. By 2022, he sold that entire set in one fell swoop for a combined $3,800. A tidy sum, all thanks to a few millimeters of unexpected doubling. Of course, condition makes all the difference. A 1995 quarter that's heavily worn, with the eagle's feathers smoothed out and the doubling barely perceptible, may only be worth its weight in novelty, around $15 to $20. As a rule of thumb, the cleaner and shinier the coin, the easier it is to spot and appreciate the error. Uncirculated pieces graded MS60 might not command a huge premium unless the doubling is obvious. Those often trade for $50 to $75. Once you reach MS64 or higher, even if the doubling is moderate, values more than double. In MS66 and above, where surfaces are virtually flawless and doubling is razor sharp, the market really lights up. It's why collectors obsess over pedigree. Knowing whether a coin came straight from a mint set or rolled through pocket change can set the stage for that coveted high grade. Interestingly, not all 1,995 quarters with errors were destined for the grade slab. Some ended up in family collections, forgotten for decades. A Florida retiree once recalled how her late father, an amateur history buff, stashed coins from the mid-1990s in an old shoebox under his bed. When she cleared out the estate in 2020, she found a handful of quarters, and one displayed just enough doubling to tempt her to take it to a local coin show. The dealer she consulted examined it briefly, bought it on the spot for $120, and later sold it certified as MS64 for $500. That story spread through local numismatic circles, reminding everyone that opportunity can lurk anywhere, even in a dusty shoebox. Beyond double dies, the 1995 quarter also offers other quirks, like the elusive die crack varieties. One of the more dramatic ones is a crack that runs behind Washington's neck, creating a tiny raised ridge that almost looks intentional. Those who chase die crack varieties often prize these for the individuality each crack pattern provides. While they might not achieve the eye-popping prices of double dies, a well-defined die crack quarter graded in the MS63 to MS65 range can still command $100 to $200 fairly easily, especially if the crack is positioned in a visually striking way. And let's not forget off-center strikes, though they're rare for 1995 quarters. An off-center quarter might show only 80% of the intended design, with the rest chopped off by the metal planchet's edge. A 1995 quarter off-center by around 40% sold for $900 in late 2023, illustrating how these one-off mistakes are coveted. Condition again plays a role. An off-center strike with full luster and minimal handling marks will naturally outshine a dinged, obscure example. Pulling all this together, the 1995 Washington quarter teaches us a vital lesson. Within millions of coins lies a few that scream for attention. From double dies to die cracks and rare off-center strikes, each anomaly offers a chance at turning simple change into a headline-worthy find. If you're rifling through pocket change today, keep one thought in mind: that ordinary quarter you toss aside might just be the next coin to shatter auction expectations. So grab your loop, sort through those rolls, and stay alert. History and profit might be waiting in that tiny, shiny disc. It isn't just any spare change tossed in a cup, it tells a tale of design twists, unintentional mistakes, and unexpected auctions where collectors have scrabbled to claim one. Today's spotlight falls on two quarters that once slipped quietly out of mint presses, only to ignite fierce competition among seasoned collectors. Each bears details that make wallets open wide and pulse rates rise. By the end of this journey, you'll spot the tiny clues that turn a simple piece of metal into something prized, and you might just find yourself hunting through jars of quarters to unearth one of these gems. Starting with the 1997 Washington quarter, it's worth knowing how it came to be. Minted as part of the State Quarter series, this issue celebrated New Jersey's entry into the Union. Struck at both Philadelphia and Denver, it carries the familiar profile of President Washington on the obverse, but of real interest is the reverse, a graceful depiction of General George Washington crossing the Delaware River, a nod to December 25, 1776. That image captured the imagination of many history buffs but also created an opportunity for subtle variations to slip by quality control. In its original conception, it was intended to be a standard circulation coin, passing from hand to hand with little fanfare. Instead, a handful carried anomalies that propelled them into rarity. When examining a 1997 quarter for rarity, the first thing to watch is the mint mark. Though both P and D varieties exist, the most sought-after anomaly is found on the Denver strike, a doubled mint mark, where the letter D appears slightly offset, almost as if someone stamped it twice without aligning perfectly. It's an error that happens when the mint's die receives a second impression, and while most doubled mint marks are modest, on the 1997 D quarter this doubling is sharp enough to catch the loop of a sharp-eyed collector. Beyond that, there's the full bell lines attribute on the reverse. Underneath the Liberty Bell in the state quarter program, collectors check for whether the horizontal lines of the bell are fully formed. On the 1997 issue, some coins lack these crisp lines, causing them to be labeled impaired and therefore less valuable. Spotting a quarter with clear, unbroken bell lines instantly elevates its appeal. As for current market value, clean, circulated 1997 P quarters usually trade for face value or a few cents above if they exhibit full bell lines. However, when a Denver doubled mint mark pop up in mint state, grades like MS65 and above, they have fetched surprising sums. Recent auction results show MS65 examples of the 1997 D doubled mint mark crossing the block for roughly $250 to $300. When certified in top grade, around MS67, they can breach the $500 mark, especially if the doubling is strong and sharply defined. It isn't every day you see a pocket change piece bring home $500,000. Records indicate that a particularly pristine MS68 example of the 1997 D with a bold double D sold for $780 at a major auction in late 2024, proving how a minor misstep at the press turns into a major payday on the collector's stage. Behind these numbers lies a story of how a slight misalignment, no bigger than a millimeter, benches itself in numismatic fame. A dealer once recounted receiving a batch of quarters from a bank bag labeled uncirculated, but suspecting it was just marketing jargon. Instead of snapping the rolls open immediately, that dealer chose to examine a few under a microscope. One coin revealed the doubled mint mark with such clarity that he immediately pulled out the rest, discovering 3 more examples. That batch, which might have been tossed into everyday circulation, yielded a quick profit of over $1,000. Tales like this remind us why experienced collectors patrol coin rolls and why even a small friar's tweak, like a double strike, can lead to a treasure trove. It's as if each coin hides a secret waiting for someone to notice. Of course, condition matters more than ever. A 1997 quarter in circulated condition, even if it boasts full bell lines, might only fetch $2 or $3. But slip one into a protective holder graded MS64 or MS65, and its worth leaps to $10 or $15, still modest, but an important jump. Once a coin crosses into the uncirculated realm with perfect luster and no blemishes, prices begin to climb. An MS66 with full bell lines might be trading near $50. Now add a doubled mint mark to that crisp surface, and suddenly it's worth several $100s. Conversely, if a coin has heavy bags marks, nicks, or faded relief, even the presence of doubling might be obscured and the coin loses significant value. It highlights why collectors scrutinize every millimeter of the surface before deciding what price to pay. One more nugget worth sharing: among the small handful of 1997 D quarters with significant doubling, there's a story of one surviving in a child's piggy bank. A woman cleaning out her parents' basement in early 2023 discovered an odd-looking quarter inside a dusty jar. That jar contained assorted pocket change from the late 1990s, pennies, dimes, nickels, and quarters. Most coins were worn, but one quarter's doubled D glinted faintly in the winter light. She took it to a local coin shop, where the owner nearly spilled his coffee at the sight. Graded MS65, it sold for $275, becoming the crown jewel of that woman's inheritance. Stories like this underscore how error coins often slip through hands and hide for years, only to resurface and delight new owners. Before shifting focus toward the 1995 quarter, it's worth reflecting on what makes the 1997 quarter so special. It wasn't struck with extraordinary mintage figures, millions were made, and most were destined for everyday commerce. Yet the combination of state quarter excitement, subtle punching anomalies, and the rise of online auction platforms created fertile ground for rarity hunters. Now, carry that enthusiasm forward as we look back 2 years earlier to 1995, where another quarter quietly made waves among collectors thanks to its unique errors and value potential. In that story, you'll find echoes of the same thrill. A small off-center strike or a stray die chip can turn a quarter into a sudden treasure.